It's the Exit 52 podcast, instant analysis Sunday night, brought to you as always by Jimmy's Famous Seafood. My name is Jake Luke, and I am joined on my screen, not by Eric, not by Spenny, not by the other two either, the other guys, the draft dodgers that tend to find their way on the outside looking into these things. But I'm joined by my guy, Zach Bollinger of the Ryan Ripking Show. How are we doing tonight, pal?
I'm doing well. Definitely a lot better after an Orioles dub today than we could be doing, but happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, man, good to have you on. We've been kind of, Twitter friends, I guess you could call it, for a while now. We actually got the opportunity to meet sort of by chance back on Friday when the Orioles went in there for Jackson Holliday's home debut. I guess we can, we'll talk about the game, but that was good fun meeting you. And I had already met Rip, obviously, but chilling at the 105.7 tents at Pickles, having a couple beers and having a good time. That was fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the magic of Pickles. Pregame, you never know who you're going to run into. You never know what's going to happen. We're actually standing in line, and then we're sitting there, Trippy, how's it going? We were sitting there, and then suddenly it was like, oh, hey, how's it going? So awesome. It's the magic of Pickles.
It really is. It has a way of bringing people together, and you gotta love it. You just gotta love it if you're an Orioles fan. You don't really have to love this series if you're an Orioles fan. I mentioned the fact that we were in the house for that game on Friday night, Jackson Holliday's home debut. Much fanfare, much ado about really what wound up being nothing with the O's. Kind of a washout of a game, just overall from my perspective and from an Orioles perspective. They drop it 11-1. I mean, looking back on that game, do you really have any takeaways from it? I've got obviously the one big story that we can talk about coming out of it, but that didn't even really impact much. What were your kind of thoughts on that one?
It was a fun atmosphere for a little bit. That's about all I got. Benches clearing, that was cool. That was cool. We got to see a very uneventful bench clearing. Got the bullpen given some cardio, running in for nothing. But yeah, overall, like you said, very much a wash and just kind of one of those games where after about the fifth or sixth inning, you're like, okay, so can we just play tomorrow? Like, can we just end this thing? It wasn't feeling too good.
No, it definitely wasn't. You mentioned the brawl there. And that's kind of what I was talking about there. Did we get a story on what happened? I heard it was like McCann was mad because he thought that, signs were being tipped a little bit there. Did we get any more explanation there?
No, and even weirder, both managers were like, yeah, it wasn't what you guys think it is. It's we're keeping it in-house. So it makes it even weirder of like what went on, because everyone thought, did Willy Adames take too much on, did he watch his home run go a little too, long? And everyone thought it was kind of something between Adames and McCann. And then post-game, both managers were like, it's being dealt with. Like we're past it. It's we're keeping it in-house. And I'm like, it's interesting that they don't want to even say what it was about.
Yeah, no, I don't know. That was a bizarre scene. You feel like when you get those, big bench clearing brawls, you tend to get multiple different stories from both sides about, what they perceive to have happened, and you get all these different explanations and you kind of slice it one or the other. And, if you're a fan of one team, you'll take that side. Like I'm sure we would if we knew the story for the Orioles, just as the Brewers fans probably would for their guys. But yeah, overall, I mean, really the highlight of that, because we never got the story, was your guy behind home plate there with the reaction.
Yeah, Ryan, he refuses to tell me. Actually, I talked to him today about it, and he said he was just more confused than anyone because it did just happen out of nowhere. It's one of the few bench clearing, brawls where no one's ejected. Everyone just kind of like stares at each other. It wasn't even really heated between anyone else besides McCann and Adames. They just it happened. Everyone stood around for like 25 seconds and then was like, okay, I guess we can just move on with this game. And by that point, I mean, I think everyone in Camden Yards was kind of ready for the game to be over. So we were like, if we just want to call it now, we can do that.
Yeah, that kind of seemed like the right move. I know, like my brother and I, we kind of dipped out. I don't know if we left early necessarily, but it was probably like ninth inning. We kind of made our way out of there with a lot of other people. Yeah, only real highlight from that game, Colton Cowser, he continued his run of dominance, which would continue throughout the series. He belted, was it the solo shot homer?
Yeah, solo shot. And then I guess if we give him his credit, it was a blowout, so I was happy for him. But 3-hit game for Joey Ortiz, that was one of those things where I was like, okay, if it was going to happen, I'd rather it be an 11-1 game than him be a nuisance in a game like today where it's close.
Yeah, it gave me vibes of Drew Rom versus Jack Flaherty last year.
It was exactly like that, where it was like, this is you knew someone was gonna have like a revenge game, and I'll give it to him. Joey Ortiz earned that. He had a good series.
Yeah, he did, and he was, obviously he's a promising player, and you had to give something up to go and get Corbin Burns, who we saw today, and we'll talk about. And they gave up Joey Ortiz, and they gave up DL Hall, who started on Saturday, and that wound up being kind of another. I wouldn't call this one a total washout. It felt like the Brewers sort of broke this one open a little bit later in the contest, but yeah, it was DL Hall getting the start, and he kind of got lit up by some of his old buddies, even though the score maybe wouldn't indicate that.
Yeah, Orioles scored. Actually, weirdly, the Orioles got a hit in all but one inning. I believe it was the eighth. But yeah, it was to start. Orioles scored a run in each of the first three innings. You're kind of feeling good. You're like, okay, the Orioles are up. It was 5-4 after the Adley home run. You're like, okay, offense is going today. We found something. Obviously, I know for a bunch of those guys, it had to feel good, especially the guys like Ryan Mountcastle being able to take his boy Yard over 400 feet. So it was fun at the beginning. It was really fun when we were up 4-1. It looked like, okay, the Orioles offense is moving well. Dean Kramer, I still think pitched actually very well. Errors and just, gosh, this whole series, I've never seen a team just beat out more infield hits or get these, soft bloopers than the Milwaukee Brewers. They are as feisty as it comes, especially at the plate.
Yeah, they are. They've got a lot of attitude. I mean, we saw Reese Hoskins in like opening weekend, doing the crying thing to the to whoever that was on the other team.
Yeah, Jeff McNeil.
Yeah, Jeff McNeil. Yeah, they got some real attitude. I mean, Adames, he obviously got in the fight. Then he, today we'll get into it. He sort of pimped a fly ball that wound up being ill-fated, which is funny to watch. But yeah, they got some personality to him, and I think that definitely showed both, today and throughout the rest of the series. So it was fun to watch.
Yeah, and it is one of those things where coming into it, you were like, okay, the Brewers, we kind of had all in our mind, once they tried to, trade Corbin Burns and stuff that, okay, are the Brewers really going to compete this year? Whether it's going to be like, well, through 15 games, they have the best offense in baseball. And we got to see, unfortunately, too much of it, it felt like, as an Orioles fan this weekend. Just every single at bat, they felt like they were just putting quality at bat after quality at bat. They'd find holes, and once they got on base, they would manufacture their own runs. I mean, we saw more of that today, but not afraid to steal a base, which can get very annoying.
No, it was. And it's interesting because the Orioles have been kind of experimenting with that a lot too and succeeding with it. Mm-hmm. We've seen Gunnar running a ton, Mullins when he gets on. Jackson Holiday went first to third today, and he kind of he said that, down in AAA, they tell you every time you get a chance to advance to third, go for it. So I don't know. It feels like maybe that could be a change going on MLB wide this year, because I feel like we're seeing a lot more of it.
Yeah, I think so too, especially when you have a young team like the Orioles have. You have these young guys that just they want to always go after it. And I think the Orioles, especially right now, are in the mindset of they'd rather have to reel guys in than have to hype them up and be like, no, you go take that base. So they're going to live and die right now with the Jackson Holidays, the Gunners, with them reading the ball and advancing to take an extra base. And so far, like you said, it's worked out. I mean, I love when Gunnar Henderson is stealing bags. It makes it that much more exciting because when he gets on base, it's not necessarily that he's the fastest, but his ability to read the baseball, time things well, understand the pitch count, what ball's going to come. He just always seems to pick the right pitch to go on to put himself in the most successful possible situation.
Yeah, and it's good too for an offense that's really struggling with consistency right now. Like you'll have games like we saw today where they get things going a little bit more consistently. But I mean, man, we've been seeing a lot of just wait until the seventh inning to start scoring. And when you're having limited scoring opportunities early on, just taking every little bit you can get, I think that is a huge help too. So I hope we see it continue, really.
Yeah, and I mean, you hit it right there. This team is two different teams, innings 1 through 6 and innings 7 through 9. I don't know what it is. I don't know if they changed the Gatorade at the seventh inning stretch or what it might be, but it's a whole different ball club. Suddenly it's like a switch hits and they're like, okay, we're allowed to score some runs here. And then they just go and find ways to win ball games and close games.
Yeah, and on that Saturday game, we had Jordan Westberg hitting a homer alongside Adley and Mountcastle. It's nice to see those bottom of the batting order guys like contribute. We touched on Cowser a little bit already, but like we haven't even covered the breadth of it. Like he was amazing in the series, but Westberg, not to be slept on either. He had the walk-off home run, obviously. Then he had the one that he shot over the monster to give him the win up in Boston, a couple nights ago. So yeah, it's just nice to see, even like in that sort of blowout loss that it wound up being. It's nice to see that, they can switch it on when they need to. And it would be nice if they could string together a series where they just, the bats are working innings, if not 1 through 9, like most of 1 through 9 for 3 straight games. But we haven't quite seen it yet. So it's nice that they're able to generate it when they need to, at the very least, and, try to stay competitive in these things.
Yeah, it's one of those things where the Orioles lead the league and comeback wins, and it's super fun. Like, you love to, it's exciting and all that. But at the end of the day, I'd prefer if we could just have a few games where, maybe we actually just, like you said, lead the whole game, and we don't have to suddenly, it's the 8th inning and we have guys on, and it's like, okay, we got to go get the winning run on deck or whatever it may be. I'd like to have a little less stressful game, maybe just pull off like a 6-2 win where we score, like you said, just runs consistently, and it's not, oh, we're down 2-0 going into the 9th, and then we score 6 runs.
Yeah, for sure. And I thought Dean had a solid game on Saturday as well. You brought that up. But like even in Dean's best starts, not to rag on him, but like he does, like he'll have a couple like loud outs, and like sometimes those will trickle through for an error or something, and then that gets a rally going. And he just seems to have a little bit of bad luck at times. But overall, a solid performance. But it kind of made me wonder a little bit about this pitching staff. Like you really need, it feels like if you're going to feel really confident about a game, you've got to have one of those top 2 horses in Grayson or Corbin on the mound. And if you don't, it feels a little bit more like a toss-up right now. And that kind of made me wonder about Elias's comments about Kyle Bradish that he made on Saturday, where it sounds like this tune-up, this rehab stint is going to be starting sooner than we expected, maybe.
Yeah, so apparently he's going to go to Bowie this week, which is massive news for the Orioles. I think it can't be put lightly how big that is, because honestly, in a lot of cases, I wasn't even sure if we would get to this point in his rehab, because he's now done throwing bullpens. It started off as, oh, he's only tossing on the ground, flat ground, and he can't throw too much. And he's doing pitching fielding drills, but he's not allowed to throw during them. We all saw the videos during spring training, and it was like, what are we doing right now? He's fielding ground balls, then tossing it, taking his glove off and tossing it with his left hand. And you're like, is this guy ever going to pitch this year? But it's give Elias and them credit. They said the whole time that they had a timeline for him. And so far, he's sticking to that timeline, and it seems to be going as well as they had hoped it could go. So I think that is extremely exciting news for just the Orioles, period, because if you get him back and he can return to anything like he was last year, you now have 3 potential aces with Bradish, Grayson, and Corbin. So that is something, like you said. Right now, you feel great when Grayson's on the mound. You feel great when Corbin's on the mound. After that, it's been a toss-up so far this year. So it'd be nice to get that third ace back in the rotation. And then obviously John Means, he's been throwing down there. And I think they probably give him 2 or 3 more starts just to keep ramping up the pitch count. But that's another guy that hopefully can add a little bit more stability.
Yeah, Bradish threw a bullpen in Camden Yards, I think, on Saturday before the game. So, yeah, they're ramping him up. And you're right. I was kind of getting worried, too. It reminded me a little bit of what they were doing with Bautista last year, where it felt like they were kind of teasing us a little bit. Like, oh, he's throwing this and he's doing this simulated session and that. And then ultimately they wind up shutting him down. I definitely had my fears that was what was going to happen with Bradish. But, yeah, no, man, it sounds like they're planning on having him pitch this year, which will be very nice to see. And you mentioned Means as well. I think he's another guy who's a little bit of a wild card. He had his ups and downs last year, but overall, if you can get him back into the rotation here, I think that would be nothing but a net positive right now. Because like we're talking about, the depth with the starters isn't looking great.
Yeah, and then it also helps the bullpen, because then you are adding, whether it is a Cole Irvin, whether it is a Tyler Wells, someone who goes into the bullpen and has the ability to eat innings if something were to go wrong, if a starter doesn't go as long as they were hoping. It just adds the depth that much more and makes it that much more valuable to the bullpen. So it really is just one of those things where once you get those 2 hopefully back soon, then you can kind of readdress after a little bit of, okay, how is our pitching staff? And then I'm really hoping it's soon enough where they can, evaluate it all. And then they can decide, okay, trade deadline's coming up. Do we need to make a move? Are we good with these guys? Are they pitching well? So I think that will add into a lot of, I know people, it's only 2 weeks in and you would think that the trade deadline's tomorrow. People are like, why have we not made a trade yet? It's like, you gotta tone it down a little bit. We have to see what we have still with those two because they're massive wild cards. They could come in and look like their former selves and suddenly Orioles have a top rotation in the league, or they come in, it's not working, things aren't feeling right. And you're like, okay, we need to add someone.
Yeah, and you're right with the bullpen as well. It feels like even in the best of games, it feels like they're really working their way, just churning their way through that thing. Like you can never get just a guy like, unless it's Corbin or Grayson, most of the time you can never get a guy to just go 6 or even 7 and then like have Cano come in for the 8th and then Kimbrel come in for the 9th. It feels like they're just working their way through. It'll be a little bit of Bauman here, a little bit of Webb here, a little bit of Coulomb here. Like it just feels like they were really wearing these guys out. So I think you make a good point there.
Yeah, and man, I will say one of the guys I feel awful for so far this year is Mike Bauman because it feels like it doesn't matter how rested or unrested he is. If they get into a situation like the 6th, 7th thing, they're like, okay, Mike, you got to go out there. And it's like he's pitched like 3 straight games and they're like, hey, dude, like we have no one else, so you got to go out there. So it's definitely kind of, sucks for him in that situation. I love that he's getting the opportunities, but I would like for it to, I think he would be much more successful if he wasn't pitching 4 times in 5 days.
Yeah, that's a really weird kind of schedule for a reliever to go on, especially a guy like him who I feel like is so rhythm based. Like he can kind of get lost at sea if like, he goes out there and has a tough couple first pitches or maybe like a loud out or one that falls in on him. I don't know. I feel like he's a little bit of a confidence based guy. And I feel like it hasn't quite been there to start the year, unfortunately.
Yeah, and he's one of those guys where, Jim Palmer has talked about it. He's got a dominant fastball. And when he is really relying on his fastball to set up his other pitches, he can be great. But then you see stretches where I think it was last week, he threw like 7 straight sliders and walked a
Yeah.
guy. And you're like, Mike, like the first 2 batters all swung and missed because they couldn't catch up to your fastball. Like keep feeding that. And then he's, getting called sliders and all this. And you're like, that's not who you are. You're not that guy. You beat them with your speed. He can throw up to 100 miles an hour. It's like you don't need to get cute all of a sudden. Hit him with your cheddar.
Yeah, he's got some Kenny Powers vibes too with the hair. You wish he would kind of just embrace that scumbag nature and kind of just like start throwing gas and like not worrying about the result.
Yeah, exactly. If he could grow like a mustache too, it would complete the whole thing. I think it's an underrated, thing for bullpen guys. A mustache seems to always help a guy's ERA. I don't know what it is, but a solid mustache seems to really help pitchers.
Yeah, it does. It feels like you always catch those guys like, that are like, 10-year veterans that are in some AAA stint and they always have the gnarliest, I feel like, kind of some Bull Durham vibes a little bit.
Oh, it's like the guy is like 33. He's like played for 6 different organizations and he's only played like a combined 35 games in the majors, but like throughout like 9 years. And he's just chilling in the minors still. And he's like, yeah, no, this is what I do. He's got just the gnarliest mustache. He throws like 96, but he thinks he throws 105, that kind of vibe.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great vibe. I'm a big fan of it. And hopefully Mike Bauman can embrace more of that. But I guess moving on to today's game, I guess just ask you right off the bat, what were your thoughts on Corbin today? I thought he looked a little greasier than usual, but he gets out of there with the win again.
Yeah, this was, I think, by far the worst we've seen Corbin Burns. And it's kind of weird to say that after he, I guess, only technically allowed 2 earned runs. The one
Yeah.
unearned run was because of his error, which I still never will understand how a pitcher can allow a run on an error that they committed and it's still unearned. But, whatever. Baseball is baseball. I was actually really impressed with Corbin today, but for different reasons. And there were so many times that this game should have gotten out of hand, that the Brewers looked like they were about to put up a 5-6 spot in the 3rd, 4th innings. We got guys on 2nd and 3rd, no out. Guys always felt like they always had ducks on the pond. And it just felt like no matter what it was, as soon as Corbin gave up 1, he was like, I don't care how many guys are on base, that's it. So it was nice to see him work out of those situations and have the ability to just kind of stop the bleeding on just almost like a standstill. Like they would get a guy in, all of a sudden 2 guys are on, and he's like, yeah, they're not scoring anyway. So would I like for him to look more like he has before, where he's going out 7, 1-run innings? Yeah, that would be dope. But at the same time, it was nice to see him in a different situation where he doesn't have his ace stuff again, and he goes out there and just gets the job done, continues to put the team in positions to win.
Yeah, the word that I wrote down was grit. That's kind of what it felt like. It felt like in a couple of his first starts, it was just very much that show pony type thing where he'd go out there. And I mean, even today, he gave up his obligatory 1-run shot there to open the proceedings. And then you expect him to, after that, you settle in like he has in the other games. Didn't quite work out that way today, like you said. But again, it was only the one other earned run. And then obviously he probably should have had one called on him, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, just kind of gritty. Like he settled in, he fought and he battled. And I think it reflected nicely to his comments, before the series, where he was asked, like, do you think you have a advantage against this Brewers lineup because you know them pretty well? And he said, I think I have an advantage over every lineup. And I think I said before the series started, like, there's just a real quiet confidence with the guy that, like, only winning a Cy Young or like having the type of accolades that he does, or maybe a World Series, can get you.
Yeah, he does have that just, and he doesn't say it in a cocky way, which is just, I love that known lunch pail guy. He just goes out there and gets it done. Also, one of my favorite things about Corbin Burnes, and it's not even related to all this, he just refuses to believe the fact that a pitcher should not be fielding pop-ups. It doesn't matter where the pop-up is. He goes and chases after it. And I saw there was a compilation of it actually on YouTube of him doing it in Milwaukee, where he just runs after balls in foul territory, even though it's not supposed to happen. So that is what he does. He trusts himself, and he's like, hey, if that ball's in the air and I have an opportunity to go get it, I'm getting myself the out. He doesn't care about, okay, not unwritten rules, pitchers aren't supposed to catch it. He is going to do whatever it takes to go get out. And like you said, it's just grit. He goes out there and he pitches almost the exact same way every time. And I loved when they did the steal that scored home. So they stole second, or an attempt to steal second. Adley throws through and Perkins scores. Corbin Burnes, Gronk spikes the glove. And honestly, I thought that's when he was going to shut him down. I thought that was going to be the opportunity where we were like, okay, Corbin's done. But yeah, he didn't have his A stuff today. I bet he would probably even argue he didn't even have his B stuff. He definitely didn't have a feel for the ball. But that Brewers lineup at the same time, they fouled off so many pitches, and they just refused to ever quit. I know I saw the one time against Frelick or whatever, he starts 0-2. I believe it was 5 straight 0-2 foul balls. It's hard to beat a team, and go deep into games where you get ahead of them, but they just refuse to quit on any at bat.
Yeah, that's got to be so frustrating as a pitcher. Like you're just fighting it out. You feel like you should be getting by them, but it's 3-2, and then you wind up throwing 12 times at a guy, and he just keeps making contact. That's got to be so freaking annoying. But yeah, I mean, a solid outing from him for the scoreboard perspective, which is really all that matters. They get another win with him on the bump. So what does that move him to 3-0 on the year?
Yeah, I believe so. And I think it's now the Orioles also themselves are 4-0 in his start. So he's 2-0, but
Okay.
the Orioles are 4-0 in games that he has started. So I guess that's the stat that really matters, is how many times are you putting your team in the position to win.
Yeah, exactly. And I think again, we mentioned the bullpen. It was a solid inning outing for them, but yeah, it was kind of another one where it was a little bit of Cano. He lets up a solo shot. Another strong showing from our boy Danny C. And then Kimbrel, I guess that was a save today, correct? So another save for Kimbrel. Yeah.
Yeah, and Kimbrel, I will say, God, he is, besides that first game, I enjoy watching him pitch so much. I mean, just he is such a strikeout pitcher, and he's another guy. He's another guy like Corbin Burnes, where he has so much confidence in himself, and he just wants to go out there and compete. He doesn't care what it is. He's going to go out there. He doesn't care who he's facing. He's going to try to strike you out. He's going to try to get you out. And 3 Ks today, and I know Philly fans were not. They let Oriole fans know their feelings about Craig Kimbrel when he signed, but so far I've really enjoyed watching him. Yeah, no, I've never heard Philly fans ever be mad at players, but I guess this was the first time.
Yeah, interesting. No, yeah, you're right. They were they did make it known, just like Red Sox fans are like, oh, this guy, he's way past his prime when he was with us and all that kind of stuff. A lot of people love to have their fun with this signing, but so far it's working out pretty darn well. And to your point, strikeout pitcher, that's always fun to watch. It's especially like you never want to have a reliever, especially not a closer who's like nibbling a lot and just trying to like get away with stuff. Like he's facing guys man to man and saying, no, I'm putting this one right in the zone. You can take a hack at it and we'll see what happens, but I'm not backing down. I'm a big fan of his so far.
Yeah, and I mean, how can you not love the stare down? It's just it gets me going every time. It just gets me fired up. It's like, okay, it's almost like a symbolic thing now where when I see it, it's like, okay, we have a chance to go win this ball game.
Yeah, it gives you those good vibes because why else would he be in there other than trying to seal up a win? What is the story behind that? I'm sure he's talked about it. I've just never heard it.
I honestly don't even know. I think he said he's just been doing it like his whole life and just like that was something he did. And I just could you imagine like little league, like some 9-year-old kid is just out of nowhere for no reason, just throwing his arm up. Like I wonder if like someone must have taught him that. Like there's no
Yeah.
way that he just decided like this is what I'm gonna do and no one was like, hey, stop doing that. Like
It's too
there's gotta
specific.
be a
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah, it made it. I always thought when he was in Boston, like I always thought it was like a technique thing. Like it's so specific. Like you would think that he's like maybe trying to activate a muscle or something, but I don't know. Maybe not.
Yeah.
That's bizarre.
Yeah, no, but it was, like we said, it whatever works. If he's going to strike out 3 batters every time he goes out and does that, he can do backflips before he pitches for all I care.
No doubt, no doubt. Story of the day: little Jackie Holiday finally getting that first hit. He breaks that. Was he 0 for 11 or 0 for 12 streak?
Oh, for 12. Yeah.
0 for 12. Yeah, he breaks that up with a hit into right field for a single. And he would later score. We mentioned the first to third run today. He was running hard. That was nice to see. Slides in there. Big smile on his face. $1 million smile after Gunnar puts him in there. It was an RBI single by Gunnar, and that put him on to third, and then he would score later. So, yeah, that was nice to see. And he was kind of speaking with Masson after the game. He was kind of brief, which I liked. Like, he didn't, make it too much about himself or, like, breaking the streak or the hit. He was very sort of understated and subtle about it, which I thought was really nice. But overall, finally breaks that slump, and hopefully it's nothing but upwards from here for Jackson Holiday.
Yeah, I've watched it like 10 times. I love after he gets to first and he rounds it and goes back, the sigh of relief he takes of like, thank God it's finally over. Like I
Yeah,
can just move on. And then, we already touched on it, but that first to third is so much more important than people even realize because next batter, Adley grounds it to the double play that scores Jackson. If Jackson doesn't go first to
yeah,
third, the Orioles are going into the ninth or eighth with a tie game instead of with the lead. So that was such a massive, it's the little things, it's like the little things that Gunnar does that make over time add on to so many wins. And you get the same feeling from Jackson Holiday that he's going to go make those tiny plays that in the long run, we look back now and we're like, that was part of the reason we won the game is because Jackson's ability to go read it and go, okay, I got to take third base here.
yeah. Margins are razor thin a lot of the time, especially with the way that they've been keeping these games close throughout the start of the year. So I mean, hopefully they can make things more comfy in the later innings moving forward, like we talked about. But if not, like you got to do the little things well. And as these guys grow up a little bit, especially Gunnar and Adley, and some of those guys who are going to be veterans before we know it. I mean, those are the things that you want to have down. So great to see today.
Yeah, and I got to give him because he's my guy. Jordan Westbrook starting off the rally there, poking one
Yep.
into left field. He's one of those guys we talk about lunch pail guys. I don't think he's ever going to be someone that we look up and is batting, 300, 320, but he'll bat 270. But when his number's called in the big moment, he's going to produce every single time. Like we said, the massive home run against Boston, he had the walk-off home run against Kansas City. It just feels like whenever the lights are the brightest and the moment's the biggest, you want Jordan Westbrook up at the plate right now.
Yeah, definitely. He's turned into just a cold-blooded killer. It feels like we mentioned the clutch moments from him throughout the year to start with the walk-off, and then putting the one over the monster, and just no change in expression. Even Cowser, he's pretty stoic. Cowser he's a fun guy, you can tell, and he lets that show a little bit. Westberg, it's a flat line, and that's really cool to see. In a young guy like that, because all these other guys, they're out there having fun, and he's participating, and they're doing the dong bong and all that. But he kind of plays his cards close to the vest. It's really fun to watch.
Yeah, I have this theory that he's just slowly each day turning more and more into JJ Hardy. It just feels like
Yeah,
they now even look identical. I swear when he's like playing the field, I'm like, that's JJ Hardy out there. Just the same thing. He's like,
yeah.
he's never gonna get too up, never gonna get too down. He's just straight face assassin. He's just like, okay, I'm gonna go out there and do what I have to do to help win. Actually made a bunch of great plays at third today as well, catching a few line drives. And he's just one of those guys that I'm not sure what his role will be, especially when more guys come up like the Kobe Mayos who have to get in this lineup and play third base. But he's someone that you're going to have to find a way to get into the lineup 9 out of 10 times because he just keeps producing.
Yeah, him and Cowser, like their bats have kind of carried them the last couple of games, especially in high leverage situations. Like, I mean, you got to find a way to keep him in the rotation and keep that bat firing, because it's been one of their better ones throughout the year. But yeah, speaking of that, Cowser, another homer today. Mullins had one as well, and O'Hearn knocked one out there as well. So it continues on where Gunnar, he's certainly had his moments this year, and Santander has as well, but Santander has really struggled in particular the last couple games. And it's just these guys at the bottom of the order, the Mullins, who hasn't been as productive as you would have thought, but he's definitely he's turned it on throughout the series at times. And then obviously O'Hearn just continues to be just a consistent like hitter, and especially in the clutch. Like it's just amazing to see what they've done with that guy when he was like a nobody in Kansas City. And then Colton Cowser, I mean, holy shit, like MVP conversation right now for that guy, like unironic.
Yeah, no, that's why I keep saying, everyone's going rookie of the year. I'm like, whoa, he keeps doing this. We are way past rookie of the year. I'm like, we're talking MVP type status. But I'll even say that I think this was his most impressive home run, because we've seen him. We all know he's gotten all the at-bats against righties. Lefties is what he struggled with. And even this year, he has not looked great against lefties in the limited opportunities he's had against them. Against a very crafty lefty, he gets jammed on the inside, 88 miles an hour, beautiful pitch, and he just finds a way to get it over the fence. And honestly, this is probably my favorite home run so far of Colton Cowser, even though obviously the Boston one, as extra innings, we see it fly and he kind of watches it for a second, the 3-run bomb to push it to 6 runs and kind of solidify that game is like, okay, this one's over. I guess even in this case, that second insurance run, you just felt so good about it afterwards. But Colton Cowser, man, it feels like if I want anyone up at the plate at any moment, doesn't matter if it's the clutch, if it's to lead off the game, you could throw anything up there and he's going to probably put it out.
Baseball is so regional, and can you imagine being a Brewers fan, like coming into this game today and watching it and be like, oh man, like Adley Rutschman, Gunnar Henderson, they just called up Jackson Holiday, like Santander, like we got to worry about all these guys. And then it's like Ryan O'Hearn, and it's Cedric Mullins, and it's Colton Cowser, and it's Jordan Westburg just hitting the cover off the ball. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, I think they talked about it on Masson today. Jordan Westburg's average just batted ball velocity is 94 miles per hour exit velocity. And technically by, stats, 95 miles an hour better is considered a hard hit ball. So he's a guy that's just absolutely tearing the cover off the ball. Then you have Colton Cowser doing it. And then Ryan O'Hearn. I mean, we've talked about it already, but he's a guy that you can't take him out of the lineup, especially against righties. Obviously, he doesn't play against lefties. But I see so many people saying, let's put Kerstead in there instead. Let's go bring Kobe Mayo up instead. I don't see a way you can take Ryan O'Hearn out of this lineup, because every time he's up, he is producing. And, we saw today 2 RBIs. First inning, he gets the single. There's a reason he's batting fourth. It's so weird to think that they got him, picked him up last year, actually DFA'd him after we picked him up, went back and then came back. So didn't even think he'd play in Baltimore for a little bit, didn't even make the opening day roster last year. Now suddenly, if you're going to rank guys that I trust the most at the plate when, it means the most, it's probably Ryan O'Hearn.
I think you're right. I mean, it's just, and I tweeted it out today. It's the old John Rothstein, more consistent than a few good men on a rainy Sunday. Like he's just always going to be there for you, it feels like. And especially in those high leverage spots, being right in the middle of the order there, it kind of puts you in those situations a lot. And, he tends to come through. So great stuff from Ryan O'Hearn. But overall, I mean, Orioles lose the series. Hopefully they don't make a habit of this. They lost another one to Pittsburgh, obviously. But, still yet to be swept, which is nice to see. We'll knock on wood for that. But just general thoughts right now. Orioles sitting at 9-6. They are second in the AL East, but behind your 12-4 Yankees up in the Bronx.
Yeah, I feel great. The Orioles have played, as funny as it sounds to say out loud, because all I heard over the offseason was the Orioles have to start out hot because they're playing the easiest schedule in all of baseball. It's, the first month of the year is, going to be so easy for the Orioles. They should be 24-5, whatever it may be. The Orioles have played 15 games, and every single one of them has been against a team that is currently 500 or better, and most of them are leading their division. And then you look at the Yankees, everyone's, the big bad Yankees. The Yankees are back. They're doing all this. Yankees have played 3 games this year against teams with a record above 500. So it's almost kind of like a reverse right now. Like, yes, the Orioles are not hitting on all cylinders, but they have found a way to be 9-6 against a very good schedule.
Yeah, something tells me it's not going to get much worse than this or look a lot worse than this. Guys are going to find their groove, I think, to an extent. Water is going to find its level. I think Santander is going to have to start playing a lot better. I think Gunnar is going to need to be a little bit more consistent. I think Adley maybe get a little bit more power behind that bat. But other than that, I mean, Mountcastle playing well. Like we keep saying, the bottom of that batting order is doing their thing. And man, you want some more pitching depth. But other than that, you steered the ship to 9-6, like you said. And like you said, the schedule has been a lot harder than people were anticipating. That Royals team in particular looking really good, who you won a series against. I mean, it's just, it's definitely, it's one of those things where the narrative, you tend to think one thing is going to happen and then it goes the other way. And like you mentioned, the big bad Yankees 12-4, they're just kind of beating up on some, maybe some less than stellar competition, and then everyone's kind of getting all high on the Red Sox supply, and then the Orioles go up into Boston and they swept them, and now that's looking a little bit less impressive. So I think overall you're right. Water is going to find its level here. 9-6 is a fine record for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where if you went online and read, all the fun Twitter things, you would think the Orioles were in dead last in the AL East. The Orioles are in second place, 2.5 games back. And the way I keep talking about it is I watched the Rays go 13-0 last year, and people handed them the AL East title after 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks of baseball. And we saw how that worked out. It is a marathon. Orioles are actually 1 game better than they were at this point last year. We saw how that worked out. I love how you put water is going to level out. Everyone's going to get back at it. Anthony Santander, he is who we think he is. He goes through about 2 weeks of you're like, this guy can't do anything. And then the next 2 weeks, you're like, this is the greatest hitter that I've ever seen on the face of the earth. He hits everything. He's batting like 700 over a 2 week span. So you just hope that we can, recapture that Tony in a few weeks, or a few days, hopefully.
Is he? I guess does he have to be demoted to Tony Potato Skins for the time being? Because Taters.
He might have to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what we haven't had. I guess he got. Probably the most confusing Tater of his entire career against Boston, where
bizarre,
the Red Sox get out of the inning with a double play, and then Masson welcomes us back, and Tony is up, and then before they even explain what's going on, they're like, we're back. Tony hits one over right by the pesky pole, as short of a home run as you literally can have in Major League Baseball. So it was one of those things where I was watching it actually with a bunch of friends, and we were like, was that a replay? We're like, what just happened?
Yeah, I was watching the Nesson feed, and they were kind of all over it. They were like, he did not touch second. Like, we're going to come back, and the Orioles are going to get another go at this thing. So I was on it, but then I looked at Twitter, and everyone was like, what the hell's going on? It's funny to, as much as I wish I didn't have to, watch games in the way that I do, Masson, figure your shit out, please. That is always kind of a funny dynamic when that stuff happens.
Yeah, no, it's super funny you said that, because all Red Sox fans, everyone who was watching Nesson immediately was like, what do you mean you're confused what's happening? It's like, we literally got back and the ball was pretty much in the air. And then we were up by 1 run because, instead of down by 1, but we don't know how that happened. That was probably one of the more confusing times I've ever had watching Orioles baseball, because I'm like game planning for the 9th inning. I'm like, well, they got to get us out 3 more times. I'm like, Tony starts it off next inning. Then suddenly Tony's up. And I'm like, did we get out of that inning without me even noticing? And then they're like, why is the guy on second base? And then suddenly we're winning the game. So what a Yeah, I'll take it, but I'm not going to pretend like I understood it in the moment.
Yeah, you got to take your breaks when you can get them, because you're not going to get them too often in this sport we call baseball. It is just too cruel, as we've seen with little Jackie Holiday and some of these guys struggling in their slumps. But overall, great to see him get a hit today. Great to see this team get a win today and avoid that sweep. And yeah, it's been a fun one talking to you about it, my friend. Thank you for joining me. And how about before you get out of here, we plug some of your stuff, your social media, what you're doing with Ripken and the boys. How about you go for it?
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Zach Bollinger18 right here. And then Ryan Ripken Show. We do stuff every Monday and Thursday, sometimes Sundays, sometimes special things. It just honestly, it all depends. But you can catch me there. We got some cool stuff coming out this week. But really appreciate you having me on. I'm glad we got to finally meet at Pickles and lead to this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was a fortuitous little meeting there, like we said. And here's to many more of them. And here's to all the continued success with you guys in the show. You're doing a great job of it, and keep it up.
Hey, you too, man. I love the show.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you all for listening very, very much. You can find us on social media at Exit52 Podcast across the board on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I am at Jake Luke. That's LOUQUE. You can find Spencer at Ravens 4 Dummies. That's the number 4. Eric at EDITTI22. Brian at Barstool Banks, and Taylor at Taylor Smythe 10. And while you're here, how about you go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube page? Leave a nice comment down below if you like what you saw, to help pump our algorithm. And yeah, in the meantime, we'll talk to you guys very soon. Thanks for listening.